When he crossed the starting line of the Berlin Marathon, most participants were still at the expo, picking up their race bibs and preparing for the 26.2-mile journey. The streets were lined with spectators, but not a single runner shared the course with him. And when he crossed the finish line and broke the tape, the clock read an astounding 1 hour, 1 minute, and 45 seconds. This man was no bandit. He did not cut the course, and he completed every step of the marathon on his own 2 feet. The feat sounds humanly impossible until you learn that he was competing on inline skates. Today is Tuesday, September 9th, 2025, and on this day in 2000, American skating champion Chad Hedrick won the inline skating division at the Berlin Marathon. In this episode, we'll learn more about the world's largest inline marathon, as well as the only Abbott World Major with a skating division, and then sit down for a conversation with Hedrick himself to hear about a very different side of marathoning. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. It's another Tat Tuesday, which means that this episode is sponsored by my race tats, which, as y'all may know by now, are the temporary tattoos that I wear during races, which have motivational sayings. I wear them on my inner wrist, and they act as a sort of mental pick-me-up during tough races because they stay put and are easy to read. I have a half marathon this Saturday, and they decided to make it a night race, so it begins at 5 p.m. That would be great if we had nice, cool fall weather, but I live in San Antonio, so instead we get a high of 90 degrees that day, which is about what it will be when I cross the starting line. I'm not expecting a pleasant or a fast race, so I will be wearing my favorite mantra tattoo from my race tats, which simply says, "Forward is a pace." And one of the best parts about my race tats is that they're easy to apply, and then they stay on, even when I am completely saturated in sweat, which I know I will be during this race. You'll remember getting temporary tattoos in goodie bags as a kid, and they were pretty much impossible to put on intact. And then once they came off way too easily. The ones from my race tats are what the Skateland tattoos of our childhoods wish they could have been. And I've talked about how well they stay on, but once you're ready for them to come off, they are a breeze to remove as well. I just use a bit of soap on a washcloth and it scrubs right off. So check out the easy to apply, easy to remove, long-lasting mantra tattoos from my race tats at the link in the episode description. Plus, save 20% off of your purchase by using my code Hillary at checkout. Now let's talk about inline skating. I just mentioned Skateland in my little spiel about my race tats, and that is because it was a huge part of my childhood. Roller rinks obviously have been around for about 100 years before I was even born. But for millennials like myself who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, skating meant inlines. I'm sure that rinks still had roller skates available to rent, but at the time, rollerblades were considered about 1,000,000 times cooler. And so it makes sense that if a large marathon was going to incorporate an inline division, it would happen in that era. The Berlin Marathon introduced their inline skating competition in 1997, and it occurs the day before the running, wheelchair, and hand cycling competitions. That first year, 414 rollerbladers finished the marathon, and by the time that Chad Hedrick competed there just 3 years later, the inline skating participation had grown to nearly 5,700. So what's it like to rollerblade for 26.2 miles? How does it feel to be going so fast that it takes you just 61 minutes to finish? Let's hear about it directly from Hedrick, the winner of the inline division of the 2000 Berlin Marathon. All right, I'm here with Chad Hedrick, the winner of the inline skating division of the 2000 Berlin Marathon. How are you doing today, Chad?
I'm great. How are you?
I am pretty good. Excited to have you on. Because this is not something that a lot of us within the running world are super familiar with, and it's something that makes the Berlin Marathon unique. So why don't you tell us about your beginnings, childhood, everything, how you got into skating?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, by the way.
Sure.
I grew up, my mom and dad owned a roller rink outside of Houston, Texas here. So I learned how to walk on a pair of conventional roller skates as a 17-month-old child and really spent 6 to 8 hours every day skating as they
Wow.
operated the family business. And so it was really second nature for me. And I just never looked back. I knew that I was given a gift really early in life, and I didn't know, the extent of where it would take me, and ultimately ended up winning a gold medal in the Olympics for our country in 2006. So it was a pretty cool journey for me.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So wow. So you weren't even 2 years old already on skates. That's crazy. So you started with traditional roller skates. Because I guess at that point
Yeah.
inline
So
wasn't a thing.
yeah, we started with traditional roller skates, and believe it or not, we would travel to different roller rinks all around Texas and then all around the country. I won my first national championship at 8 years old, and
Wow.
I guess just like I said, just never looked back, and knew that I was gonna do something in the skating world. I didn't know what that looked like because at that point, inline skates hadn't even been created yet. They were created in the 90s, and I was all through the 80s, like racing on conventional roller skates. But the funny thing was, I also played ice hockey. My best friend was from Canada, so I played ice hockey as a real young kid and also skated on conventional roller skates. But when inline skates came out, it was kind of a mixture of the two, and we realized real quick that we could go much faster on inline skates. So everybody kind of adapted, and our as far as racing is concerned, we adapted and switched to inline skates. And we all know the craze in the mid 90s,
Yeah.
late 90s of everybody inline skating. Everybody had a pair of inline skates, whether you were skating on the beach or you were skating on your street or, even playing inline hockey. So it was kind of a big deal. I turned professional, traveling all over the world. I think I've been to 43 different countries with just a
Wow.
bag and a pair of skates, and just was world champion for 9 straight years from 1994 until 2003. And part of this was traveling.
Think you cut out there. Can you hear me?
Just
Oh, you're kind
Yeah,
of breaking up. Sorry, it kind of broke up for a second.
sorry, it's
No,
okay.
no, that's okay. I know you're in the car. So we got as far as world championships, and then you said part of it was, and then it kind of cut out. So if we could
Yeah,
just
yeah, and
start that
and
sentence.
after being world champion for 9 straight years on inline skates, I had the opportunity to turn professional, and turned professional at 16 years old, and started
Wow.
actually getting paid to travel all across the world with just my skates and a bag. And we'd had teams and sponsors and team managers. So I was able to just jump on a plane by myself and travel across the world at 16 years old, which was kind of abnormal in
Yeah.
comparison to the other kids that I went to high school with. And so, it was a very interesting childhood, but I do have memories of all the marathon running races that we got to be a part of, and got to kind of accompany these races and see the running and really take that in as well. So it was really cool memories. And Berlin was a special one just because the city itself, and then also with the track being so flat and fast, there were a lot of world records that were set as far as running is concerned, and even world records as far as inline marathons were concerned. And I was able to be a part of that and win the event, and it was an event that we always look forward to.
Yeah. What was your first marathon? Was that at what year? Where was it? What did that look like?
Yeah, I would say probably in the late 90s. We would. I don't really remember what the first one was, but I remember going to Toronto for a marathon there. I remember going all over Switzerland I remember even being a part of cycling races that were all across the world and across the country as well, because they thought, hey, we could bring the multiple disciplines together to create more of a crowd and more of a product for television or just for spectator purposes. So, traveled everywhere. And we used to go every 2 or 3 weeks. I would be traveling to a different country while I was in high school, and all my
Wow.
friends had absolutely no idea what I was doing. It was kind of crazy. And I just had a blast, just developed so many relationships, was able to really make a good living for myself, and really be the fastest guy on inline skates in the world for 9, 10 years of my life.
That is so cool. And I remember that, like, late night. So I started getting into road racing in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I remember that at that point, it was not uncommon and at the time I was a kid, so I was doing 5Ks, and it was not uncommon to have an inline division at that point, even just the local road races. And you don't see that too much anymore. Um, so that was definitely the right time to be getting into that. With Berlin, did you go in looking to win? What was your goal prior to that race?
Yeah, yeah. So just like cycling, inline skating was very similar. You'd have teams of 3 or 4 people. We had strategies to be able to win the race and help each other versus all the other professional teams. And I remember I remember when I started, I got offered $800 a month when I was 15 years old, 16 years old, to wear Oakley sunglasses, and really nobody knew what Oakley sunglasses were, including myself. And now we look back and we kind of laugh
Yeah,
at how that all happened. But at 15, 16 years old, I was racing guys that were 26, 28 years old, like grown men, and
yeah.
really being able to win and travel the world, like I said. And it was so cool, so crazy, kind of like just mind blowing that I was able to go and compete and get paid, and ultimately making a couple $100,000 a year, by the time I was 18, 19 years old doing this, and the experiences and being able to understand cultures and being able to become a foodie because I've traveled all over the world and I know what good food is all over the place. It's a memory that I'll never forget, and just traveling 40 plus countries, it really teaches you a lot about life, and it's a time that I'll never forget.
That is so cool. And I would assume that with inline skating, it's similar to cycling or wheelchair racing in that you kind of tuck into people and kind of, it's better to race in a pack. Is that correct, or am I just making things up?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're not making things up. It's very, very comparable to running and cycling. I mean, they're all different speeds, of course, because
Sure.
running is probably much harder, but but the speeds are a little slower running.
Yeah.
And when we are on inline skates, we're traveling at 30 miles an hour for a long period of time, just similar to a cycling event. And
Yeah.
drafting is really, really important to be able to have a strategy and set up for a field sprint, or do breakaways where you've got your teammates that are really kind of like rabbits, if you will. They're going out there and pushing the pace and making people really chase them down while you stay in the draft, and being able to really strategize to wear everybody down while you're in the position to win at the end.
That makes sense. So I didn't want to assume that you didn't take a lead the entire marathon, but it sounded like it would be something where you would break away more towards the end. At what point did you know that you were going to win the Berlin Marathon?
I think the year that I had the most success in Berlin was a race that really we went out setting out to really put a time on the board. And if I remember right, we got off to a pretty quick start, and a lot of the race it was just two or three of us, and you had 100 or so people that were in the race, all high level skaters from all around the world. And I think we kind of took off early, my teammate and one other guy from a different team. So we kind of pushed the pace that a lot of the other people couldn't handle, and we kind of separated ourselves from the pack really early. And I don't remember what the time was, but I do remember that it was one of the fastest times in the world, if not maybe a world record at that time. I don't remember, but we'd set multiple world records over 4 or 5 year period, just breaking one record after another. And it was just a really cool time. But on top of that, sometimes because the rain would happen, we would travel, and sometimes they would cancel the race. And my memories are being able to get out and kind of see some of the fastest runners in the world from Kenya and all over the world. And one time or another, we actually got to participate and like run in the race, and
Oh, really?
I got to really see how fast these guys were. I remember a race vividly in Toronto, Canada, where they had some of the best runners in the world, and I was able to get at the starting line, and it was kind of just us trying to see how fast these guys really were.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think I sprinted the first 500 meters with guys just running next to me, looking like gazelles next to me, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are crazy.
It's crazy how fast some of those guys can go, and they look so relaxed. They look like they're jogging, and then you actually see their pace, and it's like, oh my God, that's like beyond what I could do for 100 meters. And they just look so like barely moving.
Yeah, just the control and the
Yeah.
length of their stride, and just it was absolutely amazing to see it firsthand. I guess, you watch sports like NASCAR, you watch different sports, you watch it on TV, it really doesn't do any justice. But when you're there and you're seeing it and you're running next to them, it's a completely different story.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So you what made you run that race? Whichever race that was.
Yeah, the inline marathon got canceled just because of
Oh,
heavy
okay.
showers. The rain was just coming down so hard, and obviously when you have wheels, it gets a little slick,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially where it's painted on the road there. If you hit paint, it's really really slick. So they had canceled that specific race, and I was just like, "Hey man, what the heck? We came all the way out here. I'm not just gonna sit here and watch these guys the whole time." So I don't even know how they even let us out there. But at that point, I stepped up to the line, and there were guys that were like, you know, world ranked up at the front line,
Yeah.
and I kind of got next to the starting line, and tried to give it what I had for as long as I could. And man, I just burnt out after about 500 meters, and these guys are looking at me like I'm crazy.
That's so funny. Yeah, being a world-class athlete, I guess it doesn't it's not just a blanket like, world-class running marathoner, world-class inline skater, there's similarities, but I guess not exactly exactly the
Yeah,
same thing.
for the cardio, yeah, it's very comparable. We're in really good vascular condition, but you're using different muscles that are obviously trained, and that's a big difference. Whether we were in great shape. I was, skating 175 miles every week to train, and we put a lot of time into it, but obviously it didn't equate to the same thing when I strapped on the running shoes.
Yeah. And to be fair, if world-class runners put on some skates, I feel like the it would be similar, except it would be probably more crashing than
uh,
than
I,
the
I
other way around.
I think it would have been pretty funny for those guys to step to the starting line with us, just as funny as it was for me with them.
Yeah. Speaking of crashing, so most runners, you might step off a sidewalk wrong at some point, but it's not going to be a high speed crash. What is the worst crash you have ever had?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but we had the ESPN Extreme Games quite a
Yeah.
few years, and downhill inline skating was part of it for several years. and we would go. Obviously, they'd pick a very steep grade hill for the event, and you'd get going in between 60 and 65 miles an hour, and all you had really was gloves and a helmet, and it was pretty crazy, and we were live on ESPN. I remember to this day, and I'm not a guy who's like I'm pretty scared of heights. I don't
Yeah.
like being out of control. People think I'm crazy when I say that, but the only time I'm really like going fast is when I'm on skates because that's what I was born on, right? That
Yeah.
only makes sense. But going in cars or going in hot air balloons or different things like that is just not my cup of tea. So we went to the starting line over there at in San Diego for the X Games, and there was five of us lined up to get ready, and I was scared before it even started, and I was just like, I don't want to do this. And I guess just the fact that I was timid and I wasn't going down confidently. They had like a small turn in the middle of the track with hay bales on each side, and I caught my foot on one of those going about 60 miles an hour, and really just did like almost like a belly flop going down the hill at 60 miles an hour. And still to this day, I mean, the damage that I did to my body, there's scars on it. And that was 30 years ago. I can
Wow.
show my kids to this day the damage that it did. But looking back, it's a time that's pretty funny, honestly.
Jeez, I can't even imagine. Yeah, I guess, racing courses that are flat like Berlin, I guess is a much different thing than just straight downhill like that. That's that's terrifying. Like I'm not even on skates. I don't know the last time I wore skates, and just picturing that is terrifying me right now. But I do remember the X Games. Those were cool. Now, oh, go ahead.
Another thing about Berlin was the roads were so smooth. It was like smooth blacktop. Not only was it
Yeah.
flat, but it was just ideal conditions for you to be able to put some different equipment on, some different wheels that had different hardnesses that rolled a little faster. So everything changed when we went there. We kind of changed our equipment to go faster, and that was cool as well.
Yeah, something that I really liked about Berlin, I feel like the entire time there were crowds cheering. And was that the same case for the inline skate race as well?
Yeah, this was inline skating was a big deal then. We had, a US tour where they would have 10 cities for our events, and we'd travel all over the country. And then when we went overseas, just inline skates were part of our culture at that point. And I think really at that point it was pretty cool because everybody really had a passion, and just like they were impressed by somebody running, a marathon in a certain amount of time. They were really impressed to see the stamina and the speed that was involved with something like that, as technology got better. Like I said, coming from regular roller skates to all of a sudden inline skates with a specific size wheel, and as technology got better, you changed skates, and things just completely changed where the size of the wheels got much bigger, so you were able to keep a constant speed much for a much longer distance at a high speed. So as technology continued to improve, it was just it was just absolutely crazy the speeds that we would get up to, and then honestly the people that really enjoyed to watch it. I mean, you would go 26 miles going from town to town, and people would be out in these little villages out in front of their home, along the side of the track, just clapping and cheering, and it was just incredible. They didn't care what country you were from. They didn't care anything. All they cared about, and they were just great sportsmen that enjoyed pure sport, and I really appreciated that.
That is so cool. Now, obviously, when you switched over to ice skating, you had been on ice skates, you had played ice hockey, but what made you switch from the competitive inline to getting into speed ice skating?
Yeah. So before I went to ice speed skating, being the world champion and being the best at something, um, you want some notoriety for it. You want people to know what you did. And a lot of times when I told people that I was an inline speed skater, as popular as inline skates were, they really didn't understand what that was. So for a long time, I competed in something that really didn't have a lot of notoriety. People really enjoyed skating, and it was a part of everybody's fitness. But at the end of the day, my specific discipline wasn't well known. And after having success year after year, the only thing that was left was for me to find something that would give me the notoriety and maybe even create a better financial career for myself and help me kind of create some new goals for myself. And in 1995, they had a vote for Olympic sports in the Atlanta Summer Olympics, and inline speed skating just came up a little short of making the Olympics in 1996. And guess what? That year I won 8 gold medals at the World Championship. So
Ugh.
I was bummed out when it didn't make it, and I really thought it was the end of my Olympic being an Olympic hopeful and being able to represent my country on the big stage with millions and millions watching. Pushed all my goals and my speech. This was a new step to be able to represent my country on the big stage and to say that, hey, this is what my life has been about. This was the journey. This was the get here. And I have my life.
Okay, hold on. You're breaking up. You're breaking up a little bit
With my
again.
skill.
Okay, I think it stopped. It was sorry. I don't know if you were going through a patch where it was breaking up, but it broke up just a little
It's
bit
okay.
there.
It's okay.
But that
It's
definitely
okay.
makes sense. Like, you
Yeah.
watch
So
runners and cyclers and or cyclists, and they have the opportunity to be Olympians. So that definitely makes a lot of sense that you would want that same opportunity.
yeah, and changing from one sport to the next, being the best in the world, and then obviously having to start something new that comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of obstacles. So the first couple months, I really wanted to quit. I didn't know if this is really what I wanted to do, but I continued to be persistent and chasing my goals. And after just 6 months, I qualified for the U.S. national team. 17 months after I started, I was world champion. And 26 months after I started, I won the first gold medal for our country in Torino, Italy in the 2006 Olympics.
That is so cool. And can you tell us what the speed skating event looks like at the Olympics, like distance wise and everything like that? Because there's a lot of parallels, but I as a runner myself, I don't know all of the minutia, and so hearing some of the
Yeah,
details would be
yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's very comparable to running. You got all different, just like track and field. You got, your 100 meters all the way to the 10K, right? And even marathons, I believe. So we had races that ranged anywhere from 500 meters up to 10,000 meters, and everybody, just like in track and field, would train a specific way to be able to really specialize in 2 or 3 different distances. And so it was really cool. You didn't race, you raced the same people all the time, and then you watched, the people that were doing more sprints or more long distance. And the unique thing for me is I finished with five Olympic medals, and all 5 of those were in different distances, which put me as the only other person other than Eric Heiden who won 5 gold medals in 1980. I'm the only other person to have 5 medals in 5 different distances in ice speed skating.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy too that you have the versatility for everything from the it looks like 1,000 meters all the way up to the 10,000 meters, being able to medal in that, because that's something that with distance runners, it's also not a super common thing. Like we'll have people that will do the double with the 5,000 and the 10,000, and that stands out as such a big thing. So that's really cool that that you were able to do that as
Yeah,
well.
so the Olympics last about 2 weeks. So what would happen is typically you would race the same guys every time, but with me being able to compete in multiple distances, a lot of times I would be competing against different people, and the way that they trained for these specific events was much different than, something for 1,000 meter would be much different than somebody training for a 5 or 10,000 meter. And so for me to be able to compete and be able to succeed at that level was really, really cool. And another thing is, throughout that time, by racing other people, the people that I would typically compete against were resting while I was competing. And so they had more rest in between each distance at the Olympics while I was almost doing everything. And so at the way that a 10,000 meter skater would look versus a 1,000 meter specialist would look, and the body structure, the way that they look, the way that they train, their physical makeup were just completely different. So for me to be able to do that in multiple distances like that was honestly one of the biggest accomplishments for me. I remember getting a bronze medal in the 1,000 in a race that I never really competed in a lot up until the Olympics, and they threw me in, and getting a bronze medal in that race when I didn't really specialize and train in that distance was one of the biggest and brightest accomplishments of my life.
That's awesome. I have two more questions. So one of your medals is from Vancouver in 2010, the team pursuit. Is that a relay? What does that event look like?
Yeah, so earlier you were talking about, hey, following people, getting in the draft. This is a really strategic race that's done. It's 7.5 laps around a 400-meter track, and it's done with three people. So you've got two teammates, and you've got a strategy. You're changing the leaders so everybody can tuck in behind each other. And really, you're just trying to get that last person across the line, and that's when the clock stops, when that third person crosses the line. So it really creates a team. You're only as good as the weakest guy on your team, so you're working together to try to help the whole team get across the line. So you'll have people that are, you know, the weaker leg, and some that are more leaders, and really understanding how you're changing the leaders and how everybody's kind of following each other, and where you change, from first to third place, and how everybody's drafting together to make this a smooth, efficient process is really where the team aspect comes in. And you could be the fastest team out there, but if you're not changing leads and able to work together in unity and unison there, then you won't win the race. So there's a lot of practice and really changing from first place to third place, or from third place to first place, and getting your team behind you and leading them so your speed doesn't go down, and you're able to maintain that high speed throughout that 7.5 laps.
That is so cool. That is not what I was picturing. I was picturing more of a relay where you would, be by yourself and then, take turns. But that's really cool. I'm gonna have to look up some footage of that race. And then
Yeah,
especially with the Olympics coming up next year.
yeah, these are the races. The team pursuit's really a cool one because you really get to see the value of how much easier it is to follow rather than being in the lead. And you'll have your stronger racers, your stronger guys leading, because obviously it's 10-15% harder to be in the front. So when everybody gets tired, the strongest guy gets in the front and kind of just says, "Hey, you guys stick to me because I'm taking you to the finish line," you know?
Yeah, that is such a cool event. I'm excited to watch next year. Where are the Olympics being held next year?
You may want to cut this out of your podcast because I am so disconnected from speed skating now. I don't even know.
Well, that leads me into my final question, actually, is what is your relationship these days with inline skating, ice skating and just athletics in general.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, I still stay in shape and work out and stuff, but it has nothing to do with skating at all. I was doing CrossFit for a while. Now I'm just doing like circuit weight training and stuff like that. But I've skated my whole life. And when I was done and I crossed the finish line in 2010, I kind of knew that skating wasn't going to be a part of my life anymore. And while you have people that really it's ingrained in them and they're never going to leave the sport, whether they want to coach or be a part of it, from a administrative perspective or a management perspective. I knew that I had had enough and that I wanted to create new challenges for myself. And here I am. I live here in Houston now, and I started a real estate company in 2016. My real estate company is called Gold to Sold Group,
Oh, I love that.
and and just over the last year, we sold 170 residential homes here in the Houston area, and it's just become my new baby here. And I've taken everything that I learned from sports to be able to differentiate myself, my business, using the drive and determination that sports gave me.
That is so great. And I love the gold because, from Olympic gold to that. That's really cool that you were able to tie that in. I did just look up the Winter Olympics, so they're going to be in Italy again in
And
uh
Milan,
yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. But
kind of
I
a
had no
shame that I
idea.
don't know that.
That's okay. I'm sure it will be everywhere because it's in February, so I'm sure it will start popping up everywhere and then yeah. No worries there at all. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I love hearing your journey and how even though you're not skating anymore, everything that you learned in being a competitive athlete has really shaped your secondary career and everything. That's such a cool thing to hear about.
Yep, it taught me so much, and I'm forever changed to do the things that other people aren't willing to do to succeed. And what a great experience from 16, 17 months old all the way to retiring at 32. I measured the amount of mileage that I had over that time, and I came up with about 52,000 miles. So I've been
Wow.
around the equator on skates twice.
Wow, that's incredible. And I love that you were able to put that all together. I wouldn't even know where to begin with how many miles I've run in my lifetime. So that's a really cool statistic to have.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I wish I could make it out there to Berlin. It's an event that's super cool, and we had some great memories there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chad.
Have a great day.
Such a cool conversation and just a different perspective as so many of us get ready to run, watch, or even just follow the Berlin Marathon in just under 2 weeks. That is all for today. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Chad Hedrick for coming onto the show. Go like, comment, subscribe, share, turn on alerts, rate me 5 million stars, and then send this episode to someone you would like to take to Skateland. Once again, it's Tat Tuesday, and listeners of the pod can save 20% off of your purchase from my race tats using the link in the episode description and my code Hillary at checkout. Join me tomorrow for a conversation with the only American man to medal in the Olympic marathon twice. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Intro. I have a half marathon next Saturday, and they decided to make it a night race, so it begins at 5 p.m. No, it's this upcoming Saturday. Why would I say that? I'm sure that rinks still had rollerblades available to rent, but at the time, rollerblades were considered... Did I say skates or blades? I don't know what I just said. So I probably said it right, but in case I didn't, I'm gonna just start over. Okay, after inlines. And by the time that Chedrick. That first year, 414 rollerbladers finished the marathon, and by the time that Chad Hedrick competed? Dang it. Of the 2000 Boston Marathon. Damn it, it's the Berlin Marathon. Not the Boston Marathon. That didn't happen. Okay. Cool. All right, and then here's the interview. Hey, Chad. Oh, hi, Hillary. You like skating? Yeah, skating's cool. Okay.